Hey friends and enemies, today I'm going to talk about paintbrushes. They're an art tool that you maybe don't even think about, but they are super important when you're creating your art. I'm going to be using my 3-2-1 organizer as I work through the video. You can use it along with me. The link for the download will be in the comments below, or you can structure your paper like it so that you can work along with me. All right, the supplies you will need are a regular pencil. You're going to need various paintbrushes. Wait a minute, aren't they all the same? Nope. Grab a variety of what you have. You're going to need some paper. You can use the 3-2-1 handout I suggest, but you could also try mixed media paper or watercolor paper. Both of those are a little bit thicker and can stand up to some of the layering and blending that you'll be doing. Different papers will give you different results. You are going to need some watercolor or tempera or acrylic paint and some supplies that you will need to use them, such as a palette paper or an old magazine to use as a palette. You're going to need a water cup, paper towel, and a palette knife. If you don't have a palette knife, you can use a craft stick or popsicle stick or a piece of cardboard. All right, the first thing we're going to talk about is choosing the right kind of paintbrush for your needs. All right, let's talk about the parts of a paintbrush. You probably already know this, but let's go over it anyway. So the handle is the part of the paintbrush that you hold. They can be short or long, and they can be made from wood or plastic. The ferrule is a metal piece that wraps around the handle and the bristles and is crimped by a machine to hold the bristles to the handle. The bristles are the hairs of the paintbrush. They can be made of different real animal hairs, or they can be made from synthetic man-made fibers. The size of the brush is printed on the handle, and you'll see we have a 10, a 4, and a 6, and that refers to the width of the brush. Brushes come in different sizes, that's the width, and they're made from different materials and have different shapes at the tip or the toe of the brush. Often I see kids using a brush that is either way too small or way too big, and they get frustrated. It's also important that you choose the right tool for the job, for the paint you are using. If you don't, you might be frustrated or ruin your brush. There are brush manufacturers that have charts that will show you the different types of brushes they make and what each one will do. These can be really handy. Watercolor brushes can look like this with traditional hairs that are looser and that fold over when you go to use them. So if I were to get this wet, it's kind of like a mop, so it kind of holds a whole bunch of that, and you'll see that when I go to press down, it's kind of mopping the paint. Acrylic paint brushes don't look like mops. They have firmer bristles that can stand up to a thicker paint. And when you press down onto paper or canvas, they bounce back up into their original shape. What I want you to notice about these are their shaped ends, like round, flat, liner, detail, and fan. Round brushes come to a point and are good for thick or thin marks. They can be used to fill in areas or draw lines and edges. Flat brushes have bristles that go straight across. They can hold a lot of paint and are used to blend and paint large areas. And liner brushes are very small and are good for detail work. Specialty brushes are brushes that are used in special circumstances. Some art supplies can ruin brushes if you use the wrong one or you let art supplies like acrylic paint or glue dry on the brush. Some brushes to know are: bamboo brush is used with ink to create calligraphy or sumi art. Other watercolor brushes could be ones that are made with sable hair or ones that hold water in the handle. Special shaped acrylic brushes like filbert, angle, fan, and wisp brushes allow you to get different effects in your painting. Bristle brushes are used to apply glue and Mod Podge. Stencil brushes are cut flat and are used for a paste type paint where you are pouncing the paint onto a stencil. Now that we've learned about the types of brushes, we're going to learn about how to treat our brushes kindly. When using brushes, here are a few tips. So we don't want to squish or smash them. So a lot of times I'll see kids going like this and really smooshing the bristles in. So we don't want to do that. We're not scrubbing a pot. Two, we want to make sure that we are keeping our brushes clean when we're work. We don't want to let acrylic specifically dry on our paintbrushes. Acrylic turns to plastic when it dries, and it is very difficult to remove. The paint always goes on the tip or the toe of the bristles. Don't let the paint get all gooped up all over the ferrule. So a lot of times I'll see kids and they'll have this gigantic thing of acrylic paint, and they're just mixing it, and it's getting all up on here and getting inside there, getting on top of here. You do not want to do that. You want to make sure that the bristles are staying nice, and most of your paint is staying at the end. What I like to do is I use a palette knife, and if you don't have one, you can use a craft stick. You could use a piece of cardboard, but all you do is take this and you mix it. You mix them together, and then you can go in and start to dab this, and you are going to keep, that'll allow you to, so that your paintbrush doesn't get all gooped up, and you'll have all of the paint at the end. All right, and here is my third way to use paintbrushes. It's really important to clean them. So we don't want to let the paint, especially acrylic, dry on the brushes. So you want to probably put them in some sort of, soak them while you're working. When it is time to clean, you want to go over to the sink. You want to start the water running. And you are going to want to go under the water and swirl it around in your hand gently. Okay? Now, if you say, my goodness, I do not want to touch that brush, then you can use the colander that I have by the sink, and you can kind of paint the bottom of the brush, of the colander, and that will help. You do have to actually get your hands dirty in order to wash these things. So you might want to put a little bit of soap in your hand and kind of give it a swish and a swirl, and you want to rinse that. And when you want to just dab it dry, okay? And if you're seeing any sort of staining come out of the brush, even when you go to dab it afterwards, then you need to keep cleaning it. So you would need to go back and either clean it here or clean it on your hand, and you want to dab it off on the paint, on the paper towel gently, and to make sure it's nice and clean. The other thing, once you're done, you want to put it in the dish drying rack by the sink, and you want to make sure that it's bristles up so that you don't end up damaging the bristles or making them dry in a funky way, because I gotta tell you, it's hard to get those done afterwards, get those back to normal. You are using magazine palette. You can just peel this off and throw it in the trash. Just be careful when you're walking around the room so that you don't bump. So two cool techniques that you can do using the paintbrush. I've done a nice thick coat of acrylic here, and it's still wet. I'm going to show you Sgraffito. So Sgraffito is when you scratch through, and you can use the end of the paintbrush. This one's not very it's kind of really well rounded. Some of the paintbrushes, they have a little bit more of an edge to them, and I can kind of scratch a design. And another fun technique that I like to show people are if you need to make a bunch of the same kind of dots, sometimes when you go to use the paintbrush, kids will make these ones, and like each one is different, and they're kind of funky looking and stuff like that. So you can actually use that other end of your paintbrush, and you kind of you go in, you kind of dab the paint, and then make a dot. Dab, dot, dab, dot, dab, dot. I find that in order to keep them all the same, you kind of need to dip into the paint between every dot. This is good for a more liquidy paint like acrylic in a bottle versus using the acrylics that are in a tube, but you could always add a little bit of water to that. And you will notice that the ends, different ends of the paintbrushes are going to cause, are going to make different dots. So, but you do tend to get a really nice even dot with using the end of the paintbrush. And the one thing to keep in mind, brushes are expensive, and the type and quality of the brush can really make a difference in the quality of your work. So treat them well and they will last for years.